So what are some of the recommended boot medias that we recommend? Over a period of time, we really had in the past the USB flash sticks, and they're called DOMs as well, disk on modules. We found out through research, and for a lot of customers' research as well, that the USB flash sticks really shouldn't be used as much, only as a last resort. And we'll talk about that. The reason why is that a lot of the controllers inside fail, even with the best MTBF, mean time between failure, and also the wear leveling support. But it does have a good functional use, and we'll go over that. What we have found out is that the SSDs on the top left provide the best MTBF and longer lasting life. After that, we see RAID controllers that can be used. So you create a RAID array, a volume, and you install DSS on that and make that your first boot order. The IDEs and SATAs and SAS can be used also as a boot media. And we're seeing also a lot of the SATA Domes being used as a boot media. And of course, you could use an IDE DOM. So all of these medias, the writable medias, can be used to install DSS V6 on. So let's talk about some of the procedures. And sorry about the PowerPoint. As most of you know, I don't like doing PowerPoints, but I think to get the point across graphically for everyone, I had to provide this so everybody gets a visual on what you can install DSS V6 or any of the DSS new versions that are coming out, and even the previous versions on DSS V5 that you can install DSS V6 on. I'm sorry, you can install on any media. So if we look at the SSDs, typically you want to try to use two of them for mirroring. So you could use this mirroring effect. You would install DSS V6 on both of the SSD drives, or if your motherboard supports the capability then of a software RAID, then use that and create a RAID 1. So this is really the best scenario that you want to have, because if one SSD fails, the other one can continue, and there is a lot better uptime than being on a single SSD drive. Now, the issue though with that is that, a lot of the SSDs are expensive, but we're only using 2 gig. Now you can add larger space and carve out 10 gig, but we only use so much, and the rest of this capacity that you use will not be usable. So you won't be able to utilize it in the DSS in your volume manager. So just to let you all know. But we do see very success rates with the SSDs, and I think we're going to see this common as the installations of most of our partners and customers will use SSDs, and a lot of them are coming shipped with them, especially with the Intel servers. The next scenarios we see are the RAID controllers. And what they do is they create a volume from the RAID array and then be able to make that the first boot order. You only need 2 gig of volume to install DSS V6 on. This way, the advantage of this is that you don't have additional devices that you have to support, so it's all bundled into the RAID array. Now, if the problem comes into is if there's an issue with the RAID array or the controller itself, then everything goes down. Now, is your data safe? Typically, yes. We do see a lot of the data is safe, providing that there is nothing destructive from the controller, or there was a major power hit, maybe a lightning hit the system, but that's very highly rare that we see that. So in this case, you want to make sure that your RAID controller does support the carving out to create a boot order. Typically, most of them do. The Arekas, the freewares, the Adaptics, the LSIs, we know that they do. So this way you can go ahead and use the RAID array. And what you do is you install using a USB flash stick or any writable media. Now, in case that the RAID fails or the RAID controller fails, you can reinstall the DSS V6. And you could do this very simply, and we can show you real quickly about that. So I want to keep you abreast of that. Also, you can do a repair file system. And this is very interesting in our next release, what we're going to have, and I want to keep everybody abreast. If, let's say, your RAID controller fails and you boot with a USB flash stick, what we're going to show you here is I have in this screen is a DSS system, and I don't think I could blow it up anymore, so I profuse apologies. What I have here is I put a USB flash stick on the back of this. You can see in the BIOS that I put it in the first boot order. That way, if my RAID array fails, I can boot up on this USB flash stick and go ahead and use my IPMI to go ahead and reinstall the DSS V6. In fact, why don't we just go let this roll on through so we can get like a visual. And we'll come back to that in a second and see if we can catch it in time. But this will allow me to reinstall DSS V6 onto my RAID array on that volume again in case I needed to repair it or reinstall DSS V6. Your configuration will be saved. So don't worry about your targets for your fiber channel and iSCSI. Your NAS shares, it will all be intact. Only the settings. But we have a workaround for that, and I want to show you. So the next thing that we want to talk about is SATA Domes. So we're seeing a lot of the SATA Domes, and well, profuse apologies, this is actually should be IDE Domes on the bottom, but we see better MTVS and mean time between failures with the SATA Domes, and also the IDE Domes. Now the USB DOMs that you see that's in the market and flash sticks, for some reason they're just not performing as well. They're not lasting as long, even with the best wear leveling support, as I mentioned before. So a lot of cases we're seeing is where SATA DOMs can be mirrored from the software RAID from the motherboard. So you might want to look into that, and that way you have some duplication. Looks like we've got a question. Is coming from Joey. Says, if you use a USB thumb drive to boot OS DSS V6, can you just make a backup copy of the USB thumb drive and use that if necessary? Well, the only thing is that some of the settings are encrypted. So what you do, you can boot up to a USB thumb drive and go ahead and restore the settings from your original configuration. And then you save that onto that USB thumb drive. And then you can always have that same similar setup and you're back up and running again. So if, let's say, any bootable, writable media that you're booting up right now that has DSS V6 on and you're running, and you previously, let's say a couple days before, you made a USB thumb drive, flash stick, and you save the settings and you boot the system with the USB thumb drive, everything is back up to normal. You don't have to do anything. So, and that's including if you want to add your product key and the activation key as well. So, yes, to answer your question, Joey, it does work that way. And in fact, a lot of customers, they will do that. They'll put a USB thumb drive in the back of the system while using an SSD for the write or the bootable media for DSS V6. That way, if anything were to happen, they just roll over and boot into what you're seeing right now is, in fact, this is what's happening here. We're booting into that USB thumb drive right now. So we have DSS V6 on an SSD right here. We booted, as you saw, into the BIOS, into a USB thumb drive. And once this is up, you can see where we have the ability to restore the settings. Or in your case, you'd want to do this. Previously, you want to save your settings, and we'll show that in a few minutes. Next is the IDE DOMs. They're similar to the SATA DOMs, which is what you see before on the below there, emulating IDE ports. I don't think that some motherboards, some of them I think they do have the capabilities of mirroring, but I'm not sure if all motherboards do that for the IDE DOMs. But we don't see too many of these because we're seeing that most of the SATA ports are being installed on the motherboards than the IDEs. Now we get into the regular drives, IDEs and SATAs and SAS drives. Again, it's not recommended to use a single drive. Better to use two for a RAID 1 with your motherboard, or if you have a RAID array, to add on that as well. But typically, you're going to do this, you're going to put it on a single drive, you're leaving yourself up to a possible drive failure. And we have seen that. Remember, not all media lasts forever. So we have seen installations where DSS is installed on an IDE or SATA drive. Very rarely we see SAS being used because it's expensive. But we probably seen a couple, but they've lasted longer. And you also want to make sure you're aware of what's called green drives that are power saving. You really don't want to look into that, especially for your storage. You always want something that has a higher uptime than that, green drives. But if you are going to use hard drives, try to use the RAID 1 effect that we're talking about here, so you have a greater uptime. Again, at the last part is the USB flash disks. So typically it's recommended as a temporary boot media or as an alternate boot media when you boot up the system and the boot media fails, or to do new or reinstalls of the DSS V6 on the existing boot media choice. So bear that in mind, that when you do something of that nature, use it as an alternate boot, as what Joey mentioned before. Now we get into saving your configuration. Many times we get tickets. We had one recently where they had a major power hit. They lost the configuration and the system time. It got corrupted. We tried to do the repair. Our engineers came back and were able to put it back together. That was a very rare instance. We rarely see those out of a 36,000 installation base. We had 3 of those. So it's very rare, and those are very drastic situations. But let's take a look at the DSS where we really want to save your settings. So if we go into DSS, we really want to look at the maintenance miscellaneous subjects here. And here's where your settings are stored or restored or saved. So when you do an installation and you completed the logical volumes, you created your iSCSI targets or your fiber channel targets, you've created your shares, your IP address, your password. What you want to do is when you've done that, go to maintenance, miscellaneous, and select, typically I select all 4 on the first install once you get everything completed. And once you do this, what it's going to do is present you with 2 things. One is going to present you with a settings.cnf file so you can restore that later, and or use that for what the question was before. You can restore that on that USB thumb drive as well. So it buys you enough time that you just reboot, go into that USB thumb drive, boot off that USB thumb drive, and you're back in a few minutes to where you originally were. And then that buys you time so you have a maintenance window to inspect your original boot media to see what failed. And additionally, what you want to do is, if on the event that you had to do a reinstall, let's say in a case we are now running on the USB flash stick, what we would want to do is we want to restore from this file here that we just saved. So this settings.cnf file we just saved, we would install here and upload it. And once it grabs that file, you'll be able to select which one to select from, which is setup and configuration. Now the setup is going to restore all your IP addresses, everything that has to do with the setup in this section here. So your time, your password, DNS settings, your gateway, your IP address settings, your NIC ordering, so all of that will be stored here. Your configuration is stored in everything in your configuration, from volume manager, your NAS settings, resources, your target managers from your iSCSI and fiber channel. So when you do click on one of these that you have saved or do from a restore from the settings.cnf, you want to check these boxes, check mark. It'll tell you that the system will be rebooted, and at that point in time, the restoring settings have been restored. So once it reboots, it brings everything back up to its original position. So saving that settings.cnf file is really important. So we want to keep that in mind. Additionally, there is another technique that some will use, but I don't recommend it unless you really know that your RAID array is stable. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into another system, that other system that we just booted up, which is the DSS V6 that we saw made changes in the BIOS to boot off that USB flash stick. Once again, this is where you want to go ahead and present the capability of entering a product key. So we'll just apply one of the product keys here. And of course, once you do this, it's going to ask you to reboot. So that is very important to know that when you do this, set everything up with that USB flash stick. go ahead and put the product key. There is a way where you can add the product key into the USB flash stick so you don't have to do this. So what I'll try to do is kind of show you that. It's a neat little trick for many of you that might want to look into this. If we go into, let me pull up the files here, and let's pull up ISO image, DSS, and we'll go into the licenses, and let's take 5845. Let's see if I can blow up the screen. And I don't think it does, but what we want to do is we want to go into the version, and we're going to edit the prod key so we could save ourselves a reboot. So if you look here, if you could pull out your USB flash stick, you're going to have these files. Let's see if I can blow it up more. No, it doesn't look like it can. So what you want to do is you go to the build, which is B5845, which is the current one now. Once you see these files, you want to look for what's called the prod.file. Now this is where the product key is stored, and we can go ahead and edit. Now when you edit this, you want to make sure that you can place the file, you copy your prod key file in here, save, and at that point in time, you could boot and you won't have where it's asking you to enter the product key and do another reboot. So this will save you a reboot. Also want to make a point that many times when people do this, they forget that there's a space. Make sure there are no spaces absolutely at all in front or at the end of the product key, or what you're going to have is an improper boot, and it's not going to fully load. So you'll have issues when you do that. So if you're playing with this, make sure that you edit it properly. Put your product key. There are no spaces, nor are there dashes. So please be aware of that in the GUI of DSS V6, there are dashes. But in the prod key file, there are none. So make sure that if you do get it with dashes, and typically you'll see it all in 4 spaces. Actually, I wrote that wrong. So let's do this. So actually it'd be a dash. So it's every 4 characters or numbers, there is a dash between them. So in the GUI, yes, you do have dashes, but in the prod key, it's a little different. So make sure you remove each of the dashes, and at that point, you want to make sure that you save it without any spaces behind or in front. And when you do, then go ahead and click on Save. Now, I want to tell you also that we have a release that when we talk about when you have a failed boot media and the saving settings here, go back here. So in the maintenance miscellaneous save settings, we're going to have a new small update that we have that works with the current version 5845. And this small update will allow you that we can give you that will basically email you the settings.cnf file. So this is really great, especially for any changes you made to DSS V6 and modifications. This will automatically email you the settings.cnf file, so you will have it. Also, on the next release that we're having, let's say you do have a USB flash stick and you have an SSD boot media. Now, let's say the SSD fails on you. In the next release, what we'll be able to do is you can boot off the USB flash stick, and at that point in time, you can run the repair file system. So the repair file system will not only repair the current boot media, but all other volumes. So it can repair that other boot media that you feel has failed on you. So that'll be really exciting to have. We hope to have that next release out by the end of this week, Friday, we hope. It could be the Monday following. I just want to let you all know about that. So that's pretty much the end of this webinar topic. So I hope everybody gets an understanding that you really want to focus on trying to use SSDs for longer life. The RAID array can be used as well, and at the same time, you can use the USB flash stick as an alternative boot method and put your product key in there. Go ahead and save your settings, put the settings.cnf onto that USB flash stick, and at that point in time, you can go ahead and reboot the test and verify, and then switch out from your BIOS to change so you can verify before you put that into real life production. And that way you know you have some type of failed backup solution. So this is a good way of learning how to install DSS V6 on any boot media. Thank you, everyone. If there's any questions, please email us at free-sales@open-e.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.